For as much as the early flag turning red was getting was f***ing ridiculous, I wasn't sure myself how I was going to feel about Domee Shi's turning red. After all, just because I was also someone who was around that age at that time wasn't a guarantee that I was gonna relate to it. I mean, 3 emotionally supportive friends. Did you also have a Rolls Royce? As someone who's obnoxiously repeated that part of the reason why I love Pixar, even when they're not at their best, is because their dialogue is timeless, I can't say it would have been my first choice for Pixar to make a middle school movie that is literally dated. Though I love my coming-of-age stories that actually take place in middle school specifically can remind people of very trying times in their lives. Something I was reminded of when I saw that Diary of a Wimpy Kid special on Plus a few months back. And even the defense that teenagers are supposed to be cringy, a perfectly reasonable point when it comes to understanding the movie's perspective, still doesn't always translate to enjoyable watching. I do tend to have a pretty low tolerance for characters that are supposed to be annoying or assholes. Even aside from middle school, I can also say that I'm not necessarily the biggest fans of stories about female teenagers fawning over boy bands. Because again, I can't emotionally connect to that. For you see, I was not like those other girls, those normies. My playlist was composed of anime music videos set to Evanescence and Nightwish because I was a cool person. I admit this as a genuine apology, as that's an emotional reflex from a time where I did resent being expected to like something because I was a girl, or it was something that was liked by other girls that I hated, or because of the common mentality that things that are made for or enjoyed by women are inherently inferior. A mentality that is clearly alive and well considering the early backlash to this film. But even if I didn't still have faith in Pixar's storytelling ability, I did remember that this is far from the first time Pixar's had a kind of awkward teaser or underwhelming trailer trying to keep the true nature of the story a secret, and sometimes showcasing some of their most basic jokes. But after a wacky critical approach called "Wait Until the Movie Comes Out," unprecedented, Pixar made a pretty darn good movie. It happens every once in a while. I ended up watching it multiple times that day, and even in the process of writing this, I've gone back to see certain scenes and just ended up watching the entire thing again. It's not a top favorite, but it's a very breezy, casual watch. But if there's one core reason I think this movie succeeds, it's that the character design's thread and needle of being very awkward cute, its expressions are extreme and amazing, and the animation's comedic timing and direction is quick and sharp and hilarious. Now, story-wise and the middle school setting, I can see how this film can be perceived as a little ordinary, a little formulaic, or predictable, something I tend to be pretty harsh on. But for whatever reason, the cliche elements here didn't really bother me. This is very much what I guess I'll start calling a Wish Dragon-like movie, where yes, the story is pretty basic, but it's really well paced and uses its familiar foundation for some really great comedy and themes. And I like this much more than Wish Dragon. The characters aren't revolutionary, but they have great chemistry and back and forth, and each bring their own unique contributions to the narrative or humor. I pretty much knew I was gonna like Priya, I love that deadpan, but Abby's extreme gestures and screaming is one note, but I still found it amusing, and I really liked Miriam's sincere support. The panda hustle montage is probably my favorite bit, but I also really liked the climax, which is an accomplishment because it feels like for the past several Disney movies, the common complaints have always been about the ending, and this one is really solid. For the most part. But while the friend group provides a lot of the entertainment, the crux of the story is about the relationship between May and her mother. Naturally, comparisons to Encanto have been made considering its continuing theme of generational and inherited trauma and family strife. However, May is very different from Mirabel, who was, by most appearances, loved but also unacknowledged or disregarded. Not only is May highly accomplished and celebrated, something I also could never relate to at that age, but while her mother is that brand of helicopter and overbearing, May and her mother get along. May isn't a natural rebel. She's actually quite resistant to it at first, and also doesn't seem to be quite as burdened by her mom's high expectations. More so, she and her mom enjoy spending time together and they have their rituals and their pastimes. So May's struggle isn't just about getting out from under her mom's thumb, it's recognizing that she's changing into a person that her mom might not completely approve of, from her likes to her friends, and she has a hard time reconciling with that. This, in every way, is a vast improvement on Pixar's existing mother-daughter movie, as it does way more than just the basic rebelling princess, because it gives the mother her own background and chance to shine. I keep saying that one of the most baffling scenes in Brave is when the queen says, "We just want you to have everything we didn't have. You are a queen!" And there's no explanation for what she means by that, but here we completely get why Ming is the way she is. Yes, because of her own upbringing, but also significantly because of her own experience with the panda. Right, the panda, the whole hook of the movie. A cute and fluffy magical transformation isn't exactly the one-to-one equivalent to female puberty, but it is a big red inconvenience that makes you feel bloated and awkward. But symbolically, May's red panda transformation is more than just representing a bodily function that half of the global population goes through. It becomes a symbol for the repressed or embarrassing parts of your personality that could be harmful, but also could be incredibly expressive and passionate and joyous. This feels particularly relevant in the way that her mother instinctually tries to hide the panda, as women are often shamed for being too emotional. Now, I will admit that the opening scene is a bit much. Yes, teenagers are this obnoxiously self-confident and awkward, and this is the movie's entry point to get people adjusted to its tone. It's still my least favorite part, but overall, I am fairly happy with this entire product. And they managed to make it feel very accessible and timeless, as the 2000s references weren't honestly that prevalent. Certainly not in comparison to most nostalgia-bait 80s movies. But I still got the time period with the flip phones and that horrible archaic texting, but most of all, homemade CDs. Oh, I literally went home for Christmas and had 100 of these in my closet. And, confession, I too expelled a lot of hormonal energy through fanworks, particularly reading and writing fanfiction. That's what we did with a pre-video streaming internet. Actually, because this was a time when adults didn't know what fanfiction was, well, they still might not, I would often be reading and writing some pretty PG-13 plus stuff on school computers in front of teachers because it would just look like a wall of text. There is, of course, still some minor discussion regarding its ending, regarding why May keeps the panda while the other adults remove them, which all I can really say is some things are the right choice for some people and not others. Geez, I mean, especially with Ming, the practice that would require to get that thing under control. But as they demonstrated, technically can break the seals anytime they want. But then, of course, there's all of the other various reactions to the movie. That truly has become such an exhausting topic already. But as much as I don't want the controversy to overshadow the film itself, the backlash is also always going to be a part of its legacy. After all, part of its purpose was to breach the difficult topic of periods in a family market. And that was always going to get some backlash. Remember, it used to be taboo to show parents in the same bed, or to say the word pregnant. And honestly, if you've ever looked at family-centered review sites, you will find that even when you think that the movies are perfectly tame, parents can be crazy about even minuscule things in movies that you would never think of. You probably did see Brad Bird respond to that one parent who was rather livid with him just for using the word damn. And even if it was just showing a box of something that anyone could walk by in every grocery store in the country, but with a semi-prolonged joke, it can and has prompted children to ask questions. Obviously, parents have the right to show what they want and when to have that conversation, not that this movie is forcing them. But it's also fair to point out that there are some parents that never have that conversation with their children, as some viewers have admitted. Then again, it's also vital to remember that a lot of the reception to Turning Red has been really positive, including from many families. Some just prefer it with a higher age bracket. But then you come across the ones that are like, how dare the Toy Story people make a movie not acceptable for my 5-year-old? And I would say something very condescending along the lines of, oh no, if only there was some sort of parental guidance, like a rating system. But I put part of that on the movie industry. I mean, once you've slapped the PG rating on everything, it ceases to mean anything. But there have been other pushbacks, possibly even stronger than the pad box, like the world's tamest self-insert fan art. But particularly this scene, with her slightly more intense expression. But oh, the amount of people that have shouted this down for sexualizing a teenager. First of all, sexual, it's a crush! Have you seriously not watched any kids media where they've never talked about crushes before? Or even just ogling? This was Mabel's entire personality! She liked a new boy every episode! One featuring a self-insert sock puppet opera where she and the guy she liked made out and got married! But honestly, we could play this game forever on why this movie is so shocking, given Disney's history and animation at large and the way that they often design teenage women, or just the amount of times that kids media has been populated with either adult references or even innuendos.
To be beautiful, to turn you on.
No, fingerprints.
Where a lot of people will whap those aside for this being because it's Pixar.
What do you say I get someone else to watch the sheep tonight?
But then again, just because parents are angry at this doesn't mean that they're not angry at that other stuff. But just for example, Common Sense Media may be one of the more popular of the parent reviewing sites, where they outline all of the potential objectionable content and provide minimum age estimates. And Turning Red age estimates, I would say, are still a little high, especially given that women can get their period as young as 9. Which, if there was any way in which the panda symbolized the period directly, it would be how shocked and terrified May is that this happened to her without any warning. Though, actually, one other way, the scene where she's writhing around on the floor in agony, I was just thinking, yep, that's a cramp day.
Why?
But of course, I can't tell parents what to do. I'm just a little bit curious on why a certain different movie where a tween teen tricks an older woman so he can kiss her and then they get married in the epilogue is rated 2 years younger than this. Though I do get partially that it's because it's from the 90s, so less parents have bothered to review it, but also because parents grew up with it, so they're used to it. And I do believe that Turning Red will definitely be better appreciated as time goes on. But if only that was everything. Because out of all of the other things that parents are complaining about this movie, one of the most frequent, surprisingly, is that it encourages disobedience. Oh no, because teenagers have been such darling little angels until Turning Red was unleashed on the world. And if that was their reaction, it just proves that they themselves were not paying attention to this movie at all. Now, I myself acknowledge that Ming is more understanding, or at least more sympathetic from these similar types of characters, or maybe that comes from being confronted with several real-life parents that are much worse than this. Even her telling May that she shouldn't go to the concert is because she doesn't want the panda being exposed, which given her history is understandable. But having a climax where the parent is literally an out-of-control, destructive, angry monster, even in a situation where the kid isn't blameless either, it is okay to point out that the parent is in the wrong. Because parents can be in the wrong, even when their motivations are out of caring. But I will say this, and yes, I'm going here again, nothing that Ming does in this movie is anywhere close to being as bad as Drac. And I will spare you the full rant that I had originally planned, and just let you guys think about specifically the comparisons between these two movies, especially in regards to the sexualization of teenage characters versus the agency and participation that those characters are allowed to have in the story that they are in. But yes, if I wanted to dig into the various complaints and backlash, this would be its own very long video. But I think that is all for right now. And I will reiterate that I think that Turning Red is really fun and covers subjects that many have really appreciated. And no, not everyone will or should feel obligated to like it, or will find it relatable. Even though, weirdly enough, even outside of the female puberty angle, there have been quite a lot of viewers outside of that demo who have been able to get something out of the themes about family pressure, teenage awkwardness, friendship, and accepting the weird or unusual parts of you. But even if you didn't, stories and movies aren't just about relatability, it's about trying to understand the perspective and the world through another person's lenses. And maybe you just think this movie didn't do a good job at conveying that. Or you just didn't find it funny. But there is a difference between just not liking something and raking it over the coals for daring to exist. Anyways, to wrap up, I liked it. How did you feel about it, Animaniacs? And thanks again to HelloFresh